So hey everybody, welcome to episode 298. 2 more episodes to go till we hit 300. My name is Simitra and I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined by Jaime Lepus Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
And lockdown, sheltered, storage. What do you storage in place?
Shelter in place. Shelter in place or lockdown or
shelter lockdown. Yeah, in the quarantine is well, not quite quarantine, but by definition, I suppose.
Not quite quarantine.
No, Mark Rubin down in San Jose, California.
Hello.
He's on the line. I mean, I was going to put that Gordon Kelly guy. He wrote something today, but I thought, let's put him in here. But then I read it and I went, no, not after the education I got from Mark.
Oh, what was he? Was he saying that Apple's in trouble? They're going to die?
Well, no, he was saying something about the storage options on the iPhone 12 are like going to be under what people are going to expect. Like,
of course,
and the thing about it is, the funny thing about it is, okay, so before iCloud and before the services and stuff like that, maybe you did need a bigger and bigger phone every year, but I'm finding I've got like a 128 now, and I'm barely scratching 64 gigs on it because I'm using cloud services, right? So his argument does not hold water.
Well,
so if you can save $100 on the phone by buying a smaller capacity phone, because you don't need the capacity, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like who needs? I think on the iPad Pro you can get like a terabyte of storage SSD.
Oh, people are going to be yelling at their screens now. Some people need it.
They need it. What do they need it for? Are they running Mac OS on it?
Well, probably actually people who do a lot of heavy duty video processing are the ones who would need it.
Or like that video or that Ferrite app that I was trying out. That seemed to be pretty. I mean, when you're doing a lot of processing like that, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's have a look here. Just do a quick fact check while we're on the thingy. So we're just checking here. Yeah, look at that 1 terabyte. You can get 1 terabyte space on the iPad Pro 11-inch or 12.9 inch. That's crazy. Like, what do you? That's more space than most people have on their Macs. Crazy. We were just talking about one article I didn't put in the show. I mean, it was this Gordon Kelly guy that Mark made me wise to last time, was talking about how the iPhone 11 Pro, iPhone 12 Pro is going to be undersized in terms of capacity. So like it's going to be, instead of the base will be like 64 instead of 128 or whatever. And oh no, doom and gloom. And then, but I was saying, like, my point was, well, with services and stuff, I've not needed nearly as much space as I used to have on my phones or devices, right? Because it's all up in the cloud now, right? And then, backups and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah,
and apps are a little smaller because of app thinning and all that.
Maybe, yeah.
I think it's nice to be able to have a few episodes or movies or something cached on Netflix or whatever you're using. Maybe some special videos,
Used to be this crazy thing we used to do called AirFlight, where you could get into like this little tube and it would shoot you like, across the continent, and occasionally they had entertainment systems because, you can't just, and I would often put a movie on my phone or my iPad in case the system ever didn't work. And a few times I've had to resort to that, but those days are probably gone forever.
Let me tell you kids about the days before the virus of 20.
The big 20 virus, yeah. You alpha kids, you gather around. Let me tell you a story. Oh. Hey, by the way, fact check, I found out that alpha is the name of the kids who are born to millennials today.
It is?
There you go.
So because Generation Z and then are not the children of millennials, right? They'd be like the younger siblings. So, so the children millennials are now alpha because we've gone past Z.
Yeah, we had a meeting today and they were talking about, he mentioned alphas are the children of millennials. So I guess the people who are in their, late 20s, early 30s, I guess. Is that millennials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you millennial? I forget, Jaime. Are you a millennial?
I am technically one of the oldest millennials at 39 because I'm just inside the revised cutoff, which is annoying. I've always identified with X.
So Pollo is basically an alpha, I guess, right?
Yeah, it would definitely be a very alpha thing to a millennial thing, I guess, to have fur babies be counted in this scheme.
Fur babies, yes, fur babies. There's a new term for you. Alrighty. To be honest with you, I didn't listen to the last episode because I had that book I had from the library and I had to return it, and I wanted to listen to a few more chapters before I took it back. So I didn't actually listen as I normally do when I'm walking the dog to the last week's episode. I don't have a fact check, so maybe when I get back on it, I will. But do you guys have any gripes with last week's show at all?
No, I wasn't looking for a fact check.
Perfect.
It was awesome. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, for the folks out there, yeah. So if you check out the cover art, and I don't know if it's running properly in Overcast. I read somewhere he's having trouble with cover art. But if you're using Breaker or very many other apps, or if you follow us on Twitter, you'll see that there's an image that went with last week's show. And by the way, we just added our last 10 episodes to YouTube as well. But thanks to that's what I wanted to put. That's my pick for tonight, Rambo's app, right? Anyway, but yeah. So guess who the people in the image are? Like you said, I think a couple of weeks ago, Jaime, the first three are like their giveaways, right? Like, based on hairstyles.
I got to take a look at the actual website now because I don't see the cover art in Overcast, which is weird. You're right.
Oh, well, no, you got to look at the latest image. I'll post the latest image because I got one more person to add to it because he was a late edition, but I haven't updated the ad.
Where is it at? mtjc.fm? Oh, okay.
Well, if you're into the collecting them all, there are different versions of this image, right? Because there was the image, because when I publish a square version, and then when I put it up on mtjc.fm, it goes up as what's called a header image, so it's like wider than it is tall. And then the image that I put on Twitter, actually the last image I put on Twitter is the most up to date one. Let me put that in Slack here so you guys can peruse it.
So I get everyone except I don't know who. Oh,
apparently there's a newer image. Like there's a far left image. It's the only one I cannot identify.
Okay.
Hang on.
Obviously,
hang on. There's more.
The far left.
There's more.
Yeah, it was like
yeah, exactly. Gray hat, right?
Like Lady Tim. Like I don't know.
Oh, far left, facing in or facing out of the image?
Stage left, I think. So.
Oh, stage left.
As we were facing.
I assumed that was Tammy, right?
Wait, do I have stage left incorrect? I thought left it was from the perspective
right.
Right
is on your left, left is on your right. If you're looking at the audience, that's left and right.
Right.
If you're on the stage looking at the audience. Okay, I can't.
So it's from the performer's perspective, not from the audience perspective?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So stage right is what you're talking about, Jaime.
Yes, that's right.
That's one I don't get either. Yeah.
I'm going to put this one into the Slack-o-matic. You guys can look. Slack's working today. How about that?
Yeah, it's amazing how Slack going down just brought down the entire world yesterday.
How do you feel as a cartoon emoji, Mark? What do you think about?
Yeah, I don't love it.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's representative of you either, right? So
yeah. I don't think it really looks like me.
Yeah.
The nose is wrong.
I'm still here. I thought it was me that went away. I was having weird trouble with my internet really early this morning. And I was
whoa.
Can you hear us now, Tim?
Yeah, just my internet. I did something in Slack.
Oh, Slack is such a dog. It kills. If you ever try to do a serious Xcode build and do heavy Slack stuff on a laptop, forget it. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, no, I just went, when I said I went to open an image in Slack, and I don't know if you guys heard me say that, but yeah, and then all of a sudden all the audio went distorted and what have you. Anyway. Well, so just here's a quick couple of hits on the whole COVID situation. The big news, we know in Toronto, we now know that we're in the middle of a pandemic because the Canadian National Exhibition of 2020 was officially canceled today. Ooh. And it has only been canceled once in its entire history, and that was for the last World War. One or two now, I have to fact check that.
The last one was two.
Well, World War II, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I don't even know if it was around in World War I, to be honest with you. When did it start?
Wait, so this is a yearly event?
Annual, yeah. They have one in...
It only shut down once? I mean, the war was more than 1 year.
No, they only shut down once. Well, it doesn't say whether they shut down for a year. But yeah, the only time it was ever disrupted. So it's been around for 142 years. Yeah, so that would have been through 2 world wars, right? Or Mark, I should say.
Yeah, World War I was roughly 1914, I think, through 1918.
Yeah. But...
was Canada in World War I? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, Canada was. Yeah, we were there. Yeah. We had a whole Passchendaele and a bunch of things, Vimy Ridge and things like that. We have veterans and all that kind of stuff as well. Mm-hmm. And of course, our Mayor John Tory said today that it was great fun having a double waffle, double patty, bacon jam, cognac, maple syrup burger. I thought that would really sort of hit the spot with Jaime.
It's perfect. I'm like, it sounds like like a very American thing. Let me introduce you to the KFC Double Down sandwich. Yeah. And we can share culturally in this exchange.
Or go to the Heart Attack Grill.
Yeah. Is that you probably have this KFC thing too. We have it's like what was it? Like 2 chicken breasts with like wrapped in ham or something like that.
That's the Double Down. It's the bun, such as it is made of fried chicken. I forget what the interior is, like a burger or something.
KFC, right? Yeah, because I had one once. I only ever had one once, and they were brought in I was at a customer's, and they brought them in as a sort of hey, try this out kind of thing, right? And my description of it was, it's the kind of thing that if you were a guy and you didn't want to cook anything, you would get to the fridge and you grabbed a couple of slabs of chicken and a couple of slabs of meat and just shoved it into your face. That's what this was, right? You guys never do that? Just go to the or go to the fridge and grab a hunk of cheese and just
grab whatever you got. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's very, very male sort of style of instant cooking fare. So.
Real-time follow-up. I looked up on Wikipedia and it claims here the Double Down offered by KFC is 2 pieces of fried chicken fillet instead of typical bread, containing bacon, cheese, and sauce.
Right. The sauce would just make it messy. Yeah. And your fingers would get burned by the fried chicken too. Oh, well, I guess fried chicken's technically a finger food too, right? Because you normally just pick it up and eat it, right? Finger licking good, as I like to say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. It would still be kind of messy and greasy, I think.
Yeah. So one of the other things about Canadian National Exhibition is it's very close to Ontario Place, which is where I think it's called Budweiser stage is now. It's changed names. Some, beer company sponsors it, but that's where all the shows are during the exhibition. So, I have tickets for Steely Dan, I've seen Doobie Brothers there, seen Sting there, I've seen like an umpteen acts in that particular venue. And usually when you get a ticket for the show, you get free entry into the CNE as well, right? So to be honest with you, I used to go to the CNE when I was a teenager and then, kind of woke up and went, this is horrible, disgusting, gross stuff. But it's a tradition here, I guess, in Toronto. People love it. And I think people love to hate it too, right? So
as delicious as the double waffle, double patty, bacon jam, cognac, maple syrup burger sounds.
Yeah.
I think I would actually rather have a double waffle, double fried chicken, chicken breast, bacon jam, cognac, maple syrup sandwich.
Are you riffing now?
No, because that gets the whole chicken and waffles thing, which is delicious.
Okay, right.
Think of that with just, with some, nice, delicious butter.
Well, the maple syrup, cognac syrup, right? That I think that really sells it, right?
Yeah, but think of it with two fried chicken breasts in there instead of the burgers. I think that would be way better because of the waffles. Chicken and waffles is a natural thing.
I think you've been stuck inside too long.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Got me right. Yeah. Lamenting, not being able to go to LA, to Hollywood specifically, I think, for Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. And
right, yeah.
It's kind of janky inside unless they've changed the exterior in the last decade.
The best places are.
Yeah. Right. It's good food to eat. You're not there to look at the windows and the siding.
All right. Okay.
Have you had chicken and waffles? It's a treat.
You know what? I don't know that I've been. I don't think I have specifically.
Yeah,
I can imagine. I can just have to use my imagination because that's totally not on my diet anymore.
Right. Well, unfortunately, mine neither. Yeah,
that would be a vacation day for me. For sure.
Yep.
Yeah, getting nasty looks from my wife, but that would be a vacation day. Anyway,
a cheat day.
Unless she served it, then it would be a different story, right? Yeah. So, and wrapping up the COVID news. Well, of course, we've been talking about the plans to return to work are starting to be made by major corporations. Apple is not to be absent from that, and I think they're sort of leading the pack in this. In that they're saying they're planning to have some staff return back to work. Those who, as they say, as it says in the article, either need to be physically on site to work, like hardware engineers, that kind of stuff, or there are people who can't not work or are having trouble working from home. Yeah. I don't know if that means they have small children and they're driving them crazy and you have to get out of there, but that's another story altogether. But and I think that lots of discussions are being bandied around how we're going to come back out of this, and I think that and it says this in the article too, and I think for developers, since we don't necessarily need to be on site to do stuff, I think we're probably going to be one of the last groups that will be returning to work. And
I agree. Yeah, for hardware, unfortunately, you have to be there with the physical hardware, but for software, you don't most of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that was a big reason why Twitter, and I thought this was incorrect. I was like, oh, what's wrong with these news journalists? They don't actually get the real news. They, just wrap it up the wrong way and misinterpret. And it sounds like Twitter's folks will be able to work from home indefinitely or in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense because they're a software product, right? It's not like, to Mark's point, it's not like, oh, well, we're making a prototype, physical casing for the new Mac Pro. All right, well, it'd be hard to do with that from home, but enhancing the Twitter service, dealing with its infrastructure, I'm sure there's probably data center folks that might occasionally have to go into physical stuff sometimes, but a lot of their business can just be done online and therefore from home. So why not?
I mean, it's funny that, remote work used to be the exception to the rule, right? Like, I mean, many companies, Apple included, you had to move to Cupertino. That was sort of the rule, or you had to move to New York or Texas or what have you, right? And they've been relaxing things a lot lately. I think in the last, 3 or 4 years, we've even noticed people appearing on Twitter talking about their work, right? And social networks and stuff like that, right? So I guess because it's how you communicate with the world, right? So, but it's interesting to see that even companies like that, I mean, they've had no choice. Everybody's had no choice but to figure out how to keep the ball rolling while working from home. All right. This next article from me is an article on how Apple reinvented the cursor for the iPad. And it's an interesting article. I know we've talked a bit about the new cursor in the iPad OS, specifically around the time that the iPad Pro was reintroduced. And of course, my internet is now being goofy. So anyway, I read this a little while earlier. And so it's interesting because it does a history of cursors, like the cursor we use now, like if you're looking at your screen you're on a Mac and you're looking at that arrow that's sort of on an angle, it's like a 60 degree, whatever, 30 degree angle. And it's sort of on its side and you touch it with the edge. That was designed by Susan Kerr back in the original Mac OS days, right? It's a little more refined than the one that she did, but hers was lower resolution. But, and then, I think Douglas Engelbart had like a vertical arrow, at one point. Then of course the cursor has always been sort of a blinking beam in like text-based, operating systems. And now, as Fred Federici talked about on, his video introducing the new cursor, and there's a little animated thing here as well, that the cursor now is closer to our finger, or a meat-based cursor, as the author calls it here. And it's a circle and it's a little dot. And they've also borrowed from some of the stuff that they learned about with the Apple TV, where you're not actually touching the screen, to that the icons kind of jiggle when you hover over them to imply that you're being that's been selected. And when you move from one to the other, it kind of the cursor just jumps invisibly. The cursor on the iPad is not invisible; it's still this little dot thing. And also when you move into a text input area, it converts from this little circle into an I-beam to represent us. You're now going to be entering text. So that's kind of an interesting paradigm that, if you think about it, Apple has reinvented the cursor in this sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think some of those little distinctions of what they're doing, like it's real easy for folks to be cynical about it. Like, oh, what's so magic about that? But it's sort of the tactile feel, right? No pun intended, because you're not actually touching anything in this case. If you're doing it indirectly with a mouse, but it's supposed to give you that same sense, right, in an artificial way. And I think it's pretty good to sort of compare and contrast where I think there are some failings, right? So I love the fact that they took the principle from the Apple TV, right? And the Apple TV has a very specific remote. And in this GIF, should you see the link in the show notes, so those of you driving home, shows them, going through the catalog, and they've selected one album or another, and that works great on that platform, right? But as a Roku TV user who has been watching Apple TV Plus content, superficially, like in static screenshots, it looks very similar to the Apple TV version of that service, but it fails because it doesn't have that same sort of little bit of extra touch, right? Because the Roku remote control is a very basic remote control. It doesn't have the nifty sort of extra touch area or any touch pad area like the Apple TV remote. So the translation is not great because, imagine with your mind's eye that, when I go over a particular album or cover art, it enlarges, but it has that little sheen and it kind of moves a little bit because your hand is not going to be perfectly still, right? So you have a better sense of, if I looked away from the screen and I looked back, which one is selected. And I have a hard time telling on the Roku. I'm just like, click back and forth, like, which of these is, okay, it's that one. But you would not make that same mistake on an Apple TV, right? Because it has the full extent of the experience. And that's a very long-winded way of everything I've just said, that like what Apple has done here are little tiny details that add up to a much bigger experience that I don't think you can really appreciate from static screenshots or textual descriptions.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I use a Samsung remote on my TV, and I can navigate on the Apple TV app. And you're right. I find that it's interesting because it does actually highlight the like if I'm watching Bell TV or Apple TV or Disney or whatever. It kind of makes the icon bigger, but it doesn't jiggle the same way as it does when I use my phone as a remote or my Apple TV remote. So I guess it's sort of a hybrid of that Roku experience you're saying, because sometimes I'm not quite sure what I have selected on my TV, because I guess the Samsung remote is so crude. It's got like a little thumb button, and you can sort of like left and right and up and down, like a D button kind of experience, but it doesn't really give you that jiggle, right? The other cool thing about in this other video too that they talk about here, which I didn't mention, was that when you have your circular cursor and you start to slide over to a button like a UI button, the cursor morphs into sort of to highlight the button shape, like a sort of rounded rectangle, right? Which is another real cool thing. And they've got a real slow, what do you call it when you slow dance or slow move or slow pitch? What do you call that? What's that expression I'm looking for?
Slow motion.
Yeah, it is slow motion, slowed down, but it'll come back to me anyway. But it's cool that they're moving it slowly here to show you the animation as it happens, because it happens pretty quickly, that it morphs into this button. Slow jam. That's what I'm talking about. It's kind of a slow jam, right?
Yeah, anyway. and I think even just if you're not convinced, the first, well, not the very first GIF, because it's like a man in the 1950s or 60s doing something completely different. But I think the first one that shows iPad OS. Well,
that's Douglas Engelbart, by the way, for those kids driving at home who don't know who he is. He's the guy who invented the mouse. Carry on, Jaime.
That's cool. Today I learned. I think this first animated GIF on showing what the cursor looks like on iPad OS and what happens when the cursor interacts, in this case, with the Photos app icon on the home screen. Right. I'm using a Mac right now, and on my Mac, it happens to have a very sharp, crisp black arrow with white outline, and that works pretty well, right? I've just kind of gotten accustomed to that always being there, and it's, even got the little thing where if you wiggle the mouse in recent versions of Mac OS, it makes it larger so you can see where the heck is this thing.
Yeah, I love that effect.
On iPad OS, I could see where Apple's designers would have been, all right, iPad OS is not designed to have parts of the screen blocked by something on top of something else for very long periods of time. Yes, your finger might be in the way when you go and tap the Photos app, but then it moves out of the way, right? And it's a very direct bit of manipulation, so no harm, no foul. And I appreciate the fact that they made the cursor sort of like a ghost, tiny point, like a mini touchpad of your finger touching down. But they also put that together with, as it goes over something like a home screen icon for Photos, it interacts, right? It causes it to lift up to emphasize that thing is there. And that's, I think, a pretty good compromise, even though it does not directly replicate the finger experience. It feels like a pretty good union of the two.
Yeah. There's some other videos I didn't see or sort of animated GIFs. I mean, you talk about the iPad being, like he said, describes it as the most sophisticated computer right now, I guess, compared to that and the Surface. But, compared to, say, a Mac, I was joking today on Twitter today that I keep finding myself tapping my MacBook screen to try to hit OK buttons, forgetting that I'm not using my iPad. I've been using my iPad with the keyboard so often lately that I keep touching my Mac to try and interact with it, and then realize, I got to grab this silly mouse or trackbar. But interesting, the video they're talking about here at the bottom is the difference of scrubbing through home screens using the trackpad as opposed to reaching up and doing it with your hand. The last image there, I don't know if you saw that, Jaime, using gestures, right?
Yeah, and for me, that feels pretty natural because I'm one of the minor few, it appears, who enjoys the Magic Mouse. Mm-hmm. And so I've gotten used to having gestures that you can manipulate what you're doing.
Like the Magic Mouse as opposed to the Magic Pad?
Yeah, I always felt like I don't know, maybe I'm just doing it wrong. But if I used one of those big pads, which I did try because I had a coworker many years ago who convinced me to try theirs, and it just sort of felt like I was cramping up my hand. And,
really? Weird.
And I don't know why. It was just easier for me to move, the mouse and get major movement, and then use the gestures on the Magic Mouse to get the other
but
part
across the top of it. Does that work on the iPad? On the iPad OS? Have you updated?
I have not tried connecting this to an iPad, so I don't know what the experience is like.
For those of you people who haven't used a mouse in years, and I'm one of them, the Magic Mouse has like a touch surface on the top, and you can two finger, you can one single finger click, but you can also use your finger to swipe. Like you used to have those little wheels where you could sort of scroll up and down. You just sort of stroke the top of the mouse, and it does the same thing, right? And I think if you do left and right gestures, you can do things. Jaime, is that not correct?
Yeah, I'd have to sit and really think about them because I just sort of do them naturally, right? So I'm using, one finger to go backwards and forwards in documents, scroll up and down. I'm double tapping with two fingers, I think, to bring up expose. I'm using two fingers, I think, or three fingers to go backwards and forwards between different desktop spaces that I have. Mm-hmm. And now that, as an aside, I think a big reason people don't like the mouse and why the Magic Mouse and why it's perfect for me is I think a lot of folks palm their mouse. Oh, right. Right. Yeah. Like their palm is resting on the mouse. And this mouse is not very ergonomic for that. Like it's very sleek and flat. It looks like it's supposed to be aerodynamic if you think about it. And for me, I hold my mouse like I'm clawing it, like I'm a raven and clawing a mouse. And so I don't move my wrists to move the mouse for minor movements. I'm using just my fingers and moving the claw around, if that makes sense. Yep. So, different strokes for different folks. I hear good things about the trackpad.
I've got a Mobi E battery in my mouse, right? And I don't use it very often, but I discovered that the Mobi E is actually a key charger because I actually use it to charge my phone during the day. When I'm sitting at the desk, I just leave my phone sitting on top of it. It doesn't charge very quickly, but at least it keeps me from running out of juice all day if I'm on the phone all day, kind of thing. Just a little side note. But I just plugged I just turned my mouse on so I can try it out and see what the gestures do on the iPad because they are paired. Anyway, that's cool. Yeah, I'm same with you, Mark. I use the Magic Trackpad 2, which is the same size glass swipey thing that we have on our MacBook Pros, right? Yep. Yeah. So I'm scrolling right now with it. Yeah. I'm so surprised you didn't recognize Douglas Engelbart, Jaime.
It's before my time.
Yeah. I think what he's doing voice control to move the mouse, right? Because I think the demo doesn't have any sound in the image, but
it looks like a very old-fashioned Dragon naturally speaking demo from IBM.
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, we can fact check this for next week. I think he was the second guy on the internet, right? Like the first guy who invented. I think he went on to form 3Com, but the first guy who had like the first IP address, Douglas Engelbart, was the guy he connected to it at Xerox PARC, right? So he technically had the second address. But he did a number of things for computing, like the mouse is probably the one people remember the most. But I think he was involved in early Ethernet as well. So what do you remember about him, Mark?
Looking up first IP address ever. See if we can.
Yes, to sort of double. Yes,
and some of my memory, whatever it may be, is questionable because I'm also a fan of the Halt and Catch Fire show and spoilers for later seasons when they start talking about some of these topics, and I don't know what was real and what was made up based on historical events.
Yeah. It's an interesting sort of they call it fic-lit, where it's fictional literature or something like that. It's based on actual facts and things.
Loosely based on actual facts, though.
Yeah. There are some. I mean, they do talk about the Mac and Windows and stuff like that on the show. There's a real cool picture of the original mouse. That if you go to the Computer History Museum where's Menlo Park? Is that where Google is? It's actually on Google campus.
Google is in Mountain View.
Mountain View. So
Facebook is Menlo Park.
And the Computer Museum is not actually on Google's campus. It's right next door. It's right. Right butted up next to it, but it is not actually on the campus.
So if you're ever going to Google for an interview, make sure you go visit the Google or the Computer History Museum. But they have the original mouse that Douglas had. He made it out of wood with a button on top, and then they also have a Xerox PARC and a bunch of old Macs and stuff like that there too.
Arpanet, which was the precursor to the internet, this is why I was looking it up because something didn't sound right. Was not at Xerox. It had 4 nodes, one at UCLA, one at Stanford Research Institute in Palo Alto, one at UC Santa Barbara, one of my alma maters actually, and one at the University of Utah School of Computing.
I think what I'm talking about is the history of Ethernet, not necessarily.
So Ethernet was after Arpanet.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he's no longer with us. I think he just passed away a few years ago, actually. Yeah, he was one of those people over at Xerox PARC that did all that, early inventing of computer stuff.
Okay, yeah. Ethernet was Bob Metcalf at Xerox Palo Alto, Xerox PARC.
At Xerox PARC, yeah.
Yeah.
By who?
So Bob Metcalf, famous guy.
Metcalf, right? Yeah.
And let's see, it's certainly possible that his first connection was to a colleague down the street or down the hallway.
In the office, yeah.
Yeah.
It's in my fact is coming from that Accidental Empires book by Robert Crinchley.
Don't know.
Called Accidental Empires, or How the Boys of Silicon Valley Made Their Millions but Still Can't Get a Date. Yeah. Anyway, back when nerds were nerds. Now everybody's a nerd, right? So.
Now it's cool to be a nerd.
Yeah. All right. Well, so here's another story here. I was reading this one. I don't know if it's true. I'll have to find out when I get it. But apparently, the new MacBooks or MacBook Pros, according to this article here, charge better on the right side of USB ports than on the left. And it's something to do with something to do with the.
Well, it's all about heat, right? It's
right. Yeah.
It's when you charge it on the left side, it's I guess it's closer to the fan, or the sensor that turns on the fan,
right?
It turns. Oh, wait a second. No, it's not the fan. Let's see. The machine would slow down all the fans. Oh, no. Okay, it's closer to the CPU apparently because it heats it up. And of course, one of the things that iOS does to protect itself is if you ever looked at your activity monitor when things are going crazy and slow on Mac, you see this thing called the kernel task running all the time.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, what that actually is it's a defense mechanism that iOS does. When things start heating up, it starts running these other processes, which are fake processes, in order to prevent your tasks from running and heating up.
Oh, really? It's like a guard on the CPU.
Yeah, it is. Totally is.
Mac OS, not your Mac OS, not iOS, right?
Right. Right. This is Mac OS. Did I say iOS?
It probably does the same thing on the phone too. But.
Maybe so. Yeah. Oh,
that's interesting.
So if you, according to this, and no reason to disbelieve it, when you charge from the left side, it heats things up more, so you start running kernel tasks more, and your Mac slows down.
I have to take that under advisement because I know I've heard people complain about their Macs and wanting to kill processes and stuff like that, and I wonder if they wonder what this one is. But
I was bummed when I read this and saw this in the show notes because I put my Mac on the right hand side. I like having the auxiliary display on that right hand side, and I'm like, oh, good. That means that my MacBook Pro is being charged from the left side, which is noted here. And I can't think of a bigger peripheral than my monitor, which is connected to the MacBook Pro. I'm not sure what ends up happening as it drives stuff. Maybe it's different if it's not spitting out power like to some other USB drive or something. I've not noticed any ill effects so far. I haven't seen anything happen.
Well, I think a lot will depend on the environment. If it's if your Mac is sitting on a place where it has good ventilation and it can heat sink itself, it can dissipate the heat, then it's probably not an issue. If you've got your Mac sitting in some confined space where there's not a lot of airflow, and then there's nowhere for the heat to go, then things are going to heat up. And if you start, running some serious programs while you're trying to charge, then you're probably going to run into these issues.
Yeah. So they are saying charge on the right hand side is better than left, Jaime. Right?
Yeah, which is the opposite of how I have it. And this article has me like scared enough. I'm like, should I switch and change my whole desk? My whole desk is built around this concept. And
what will probably fix it is if you get a little fan and run it on top of your Mac. Seriously. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about the the heat sink idea. I'm like, well, I happen to use one of those, I think it's Rain Design, metal risers. It's like a sheet of aluminum, formed aluminum that puts the MacBook Pro at like just the angle I like. I'm like, oh, that probably gives enough ventilation, and the metal is a heat sink for dissipating heat away from the MacBook Pro. So maybe that's why I have not seen this behavior.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, it's also too that like I'm looking at my old my MacBook Air right now, the 2013, and the MagSafe is on the left-hand side. So we probably all gotten used to plugging things on the left-hand side, for power and that kind of stuff, right? That's probably where the habit comes from.
Interesting. I always plug my USB-C Mac in on the right for some reason, but my old Mac with the MagSafe, it's always plugged in on the left.
Yeah. Well, that's because there's only one MagSafe.
That's
right?
the only way to do it. Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. Just keep an eye on that. I'm gonna have to check out this kernel testing. That's kind of that's I learned something today. How about that?
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, like I know spin dump is the spinner that comes up when it's doing swapping and it's kind of busy, right? So everybody calls it the beach ball or spinning wheel of death or whatever. Proper name is spin dump. All right. Now I forgot. We were talking about this is sort of a follow up fact checky kind of thing. I actually have a copy of Speed Doubler here in minted box. I'm looking at it right now. I didn't realize at the time, but it was one of the things we added to our old 68K Max to make it faster and from Kinetics. And they're the same people who made Disk Doubler, which was a on-the-fly compression thing that we used to use to save disk space back when we had really small drives. But we were talking last week about the PowerPC 68K emulator suffered on the new PowerPCs because it kind of slowed down the process. Well, Speed Doubler was one of these tools that came along and made the legacy 68K apps run faster on the new PowerPCs. This is back in the day. So yeah, just Kinetics made Speed Doubler. Kinetics also, I don't know if you guys remember this, but apparently the same guy who wrote Speed Doubler also wrote there was a PlayStation VGS, I think it was called Virtual Game System, and you could play PlayStation games on your Mac back in the early days before time. Yeah, the same dude, same engineer who wrote the Speed Doubler did that as well. Anywho, and I don't know have you guys heard about the AirPods Studio?
Yeah, I've been hearing about that.
Yeah, so this came up
new over-the-ear headphone.
Yeah, for those of you who can't use the current AirPods. Or prefer over the ears. I do when I'm doing audio. I like to mixing and stuff. I got them on right now over the ears. But yeah, these ones are going to come out for like $349. Is $349 seems to be the magic number, eh, Jaime?
That's the bad number that we identified for
bad number.
The iPod Hi-Fi and the HomePod pricing.
Right. So
but maybe
for this, I guess.
Who knows? Maybe that's just the price you pay. No pun intended for audio based peripherals.
Yeah. So John Prosser again has brought up this rumor about the AirPods Studio. He says that Apple's sticking to the AirPods name in their branding. So I don't know where he found this link here, but yeah, no more fun because these guys keep spilling all the beans before they hit the street, right?
It certainly makes the events less of a surprise. There's less sort of awe of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did that. Oh yeah, we heard about that the night before. It's rough. It's rough.
Well, it's only for 2/3 of us who are on Twitter, right? Because the other third doesn't care and finds out the old-fashioned way.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we'll have to see what happens with that. I guess something you guys might be in the market for because you're both non-AirPod users, right, or earbud users, right?
Yeah, I do use over-the-ear earphones, but not so much for listening to music, to be honest. Except when I'm at the office, I have some noise canceling ones. I have some Bose noise canceling ones. So I don't know. I can't tell from this article whether these are noise canceling or not. I would think
to compete with the AirPods, the current AirPods. What do they call AirPods Pro? The new ones?
Well, are they really meant to compete with those with the AirPod, the real AirPods?
Sure. I think, like I said, I think there's a large population of people who can't use that style of headphone, right? So been around for a while, but a lot of people can't use it. So maybe over the ears, or and the kids like them, right? So it's a fashion statement. You get to wear them around your neck and stuff when you're chilling. Anyway, Jaime would tell us all about that, I'm sure.
For me, and I'm very cognizant that this is a very much unique situation. But as I've mentioned on the show before, I've been hesitant to buy the AirPods, and I'm more interested and therefore less hesitant to try out the AirPods Pro, since they do have various sized sort of tips that you could put on there that might help solve the problem that I have of, my ear canals are just not shaped appropriately to go without pain after prolonged use of the earpods, which are very similarly shaped. So this AirPods, what did you say, Studio, the over-the-ear headphones, it sounds like, oh, Lopez, that's solving your problem. Like, but did you forget that I also have a spiky hairdo? And think about where that band would go. I do have.
Yeah, but you can wear it backward like the cool kids do, right?
Yeah, it doesn't stay, like, nobody ever designs for that case to be, stay put on your head.
The way that, like, top bun, you got to move into the top bun.
So I do have behind the head, over the ear headphones that I use when I go outside and, walk the dog, that sort of thing. Listen to podcasts like this very show. And they're actually designed for that, right? They have a little over the ear piece that, keeps gravity from doing what it does, right? And ripping them off my ears. And it's behind the back is where they're connected. So I don't have to worry about my lovely hair. And
so does it ever snow in Seattle?
Not too frequently.
Oh, I was going to say, what do you do when it snows? You wear a hat?
I don't live in Toronto. That's what I do. So it's not that big of an issue.
I guess. All right.
Yeah, I don't wear hats too often. I tend to wear visors in the summer if people are interested. So yeah, but that's kind of a very roundabout point here. I'm like, I'm kind of stuck because they probably didn't design it for my particular use case, and that's not anybody's fault. It's just a consequence of my hairstyle. And we were chatting today about in a pandemic world and less frequent access to, or no access in my case, to haircuts. I'm like, my spikes are getting pretty big. The last time it was 4 inches. Now they're 4.25 inches. The structural integrity of my hair gel is getting tested through the next coming months.
Yeah. Have to work on your engineering and architectural studies. All right. Over to you, Jaime, for some Facebook-y kind of nonsense.
Did you skip one? I'm confused.
Oh, yes, I did skip one. Yeah. Back to you again with the exciting adventures of the UI button.
The exciting conclusion. Yeah. So this is in that series that I'd mentioned, the very first one from Jeff Watkins about Nobody Loves UI Button. If you didn't catch it in the previous shows, there was, some, hey, like, here's stuff you could do to make use of UI Button and what it gives you out of the box. And importantly, not lose the accessibility features that you get out of the box for UI Button. But, as the series goes on, sort of recognizes that, there are some downsides to UI Button, and there's a reason why it's very tempting for people to say, hey, let's just throw a tap gesture recognizer on this random arbitrary view and call it good, missing out on the accessibility features, which is unfortunate. This one on building an adaptive button, this one talks about like, all right, so imagine you wanted to have what seems very simple and straightforward, a button where you have text on one side and an image asset on the other side, left or right, up or down, configurable, and deal with things like adaptive text sizes. And it's a good read. It's a pretty light, straightforward read, but I'll lead you way down to the bottom where it's like, it actually turns out that if you want to deal with auto layout and other things in a sane way, you actually kind of want to avoid what UI Button does, because it's very jealous about how it guards its image label and icon or image view, whatever they're called. And in this example, Jeff goes the opposite route, or I should say a very different route of saying, you can still subclass UI control, which is something that UI Button conforms to. So it felt like this whole series sort of took me on this long journey towards, we kind of don't love UI Button because it has very serious problems. You should probably be doing UI control to get a lot of the accessibility aspects, but yet actually have more ability to customize what this looks like and feels like. Granted, if UI Button does what you want to do, nothing wrong with that. But I can certainly see why when people want to go custom and they don't want to lose the ability to have accessibility features, it seems like UI control is sort of the way to go.
This is in the same way that great artists, Tim, you can talk more about this, need to learn all the rules first before you learn how to break the rules. Or like jazz musicians. You need to be an expert musician, and you need to be an expert at the formal ways of doing things in music in order to know how to break the rules and still do it right. Well, whatever right means. Same kind of thing there. If you know UI Button, you know its limitations, then you know when you can live within the limitations of UI Button. And then when you can't live within those, that's when you go outside. You don't just go and just do it for the sake of doing it. So yeah, I get his point.
Yeah, you're right. Picasso couldn't be Picasso unless he knew how to use a brush.
Exactly.
All the ways to use a brush, that is. Cool. All right. Poor Jeff is going to be known as the UI Button guy from now on.
For the rest of his life, yeah.
Whenever we're talking about buttons, we'll drag him out. So hopefully he hasn't got another career in mind. All right. Now can we talk about Facebook?
Yeah. And
what the Facebook?
So by the time you listen to this episode, this event is far in the rearview mirror, but I thought it was worth bringing up because it brings together a lot of different sort of points we've made on this show.
What is it that Mark hates most, I think?
What, third-party libraries?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I feel like there were some unfair hot takes on this situation that I want to address more fairly, not in defense, but more in teasing apart where truth actually lies and guidance for you listeners at home. And what I'm talking about is the crashing bug that the Facebook SDK had for every iOS app that included it. And note it, I said included the SDK, not even necessarily used it.
Really?
In a, some folks might have had Facebook installed as part of their libraries merely so they could do the analytics tracking for things like, oh, we did a Facebook app install ad and we kind of want to see, are we getting value from that? And can we track the ad spend to actual realized users signed up, downloaded and installed and signed up? And it turns out that, and we'll definitely talk about this, it gets even nuttier that if you merely linked the Facebook SDK to your project and didn't actually call it, as some people tried to do to fix this problem, like, oh, what if I just don't initialize it? Like, nope, this problem still impacted you as well. And it turned out that somewhere in the sort of guts of how the Facebook SDK initializes itself, there was a programmer error, a very common programmer error. It's happened to everybody. If you're listening to this show, I guarantee you have had this bug happen to you. You forget to do a nil check before you try accessing an object in, I think this is a dictionary, right?
Right.
And something changed where normally the life cycle is the SDK is loaded up, not necessarily fired up as part of, you actually calling and instantiating, which we'll get to. Like when your app starts up, the SDK's life cycle has already begun. And apparently it phones home to grab some sort of configuration from Facebook servers. And I'm sure 99.9999999% of the time, this has gone without fail, except for about a week ago when this happened, where something changed in the server response where a key that's supposed to be there and is expected was not there. And the SDK, without the nil check, promptly blew up. And since this is super early, like I said, your app has begun, this thing has begun as well. All the apps were crashing. You're talking about your OfferUps, your Spotify's, your Uber, I want to say. There was a ton of apps. This one says what? Spotify, Venmo, TikTok, and other apps were crashing. And people tried to fix it like, oh, well, who knows what's going on with the SDK? Let's just remove the SDK for a patch release. And people realized, wait a minute, it's still crashing. What is happening? Well, what was happening is that the SDK was using an interesting trick where it was using the class loading mechanism inherent to the Objective-C runtime. And to be clear, this would have happened even if they'd written it in Swift too, right? Mm-hmm. So it was saying, oh, when the linker does its job and your app begins to get pulled in, all its dependencies and everything to actually run, this little bit of code runs at the class, it's like plus load, if you can visualize that, right? So it's a static class level method called load. They had overridden that. We're doing this particular phoning home, grabbing bits of information they needed for configuration or etc. Had the error and things were dying. So as your app was getting sort of put together to come to life, it was just full on crashing right there, right? So apparently they had done this technique to get as early into the application loading lifecycle as possible. As far as I know, you can't get any closer to time zero for this. All right, so that's what happened, right? They eventually patched it on the server side, even without additional SDK changes, which I've not followed up on. I don't know. Presumably, hopefully, they've gone in and changed the code on the SDK so it guards against that situation. But they fixed it so that nobody had to release new apps in order to resolve this problem. But for I don't know how many hours it was, everybody who had that SDK included, not even necessarily used, but just hope you didn't link it and decide not to use it, you were crashing. Right? Now, I bring out to the panel some things like I knew we've talked about in the show, third-party libraries, there's a price to the magic, right? There's a cost. We want to put it that way, that you shouldn't throw in third-party stuff willy-nilly. You should be very mindful and very careful about considering them, which I'm sure, Mark, you definitely would agree with that point, I think.
Strongly agree with that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think the hot take part of it that I'd seen some some more popular folks on interwebs, I'm not going to call them out specifically, just sort of indirectly here. They're like, oh, we'll see. Well, was that worth it? Obviously the implication being it wasn't worth it included. I'm like, well, hold on. I'm not saying you should, just throw it in an app just because, but I've come from an environment where I'm like, oh, it was absolutely 100% worth it. Even if your app was crashing for, 4 to 5 hours, I'm sure that was a miserable time for the engineers that were dealing with that. I would not have wanted to deal with that. But if I look at it objectively, I'm like, yeah, the reduction in friction for stuff like Facebook login, reduction in friction for figuring out your Facebook ad spend and how effective it is immensely worth it if that fits your use case, right? And I'm very, very clear here. If it fits your use case for something where it wasn't, that important to your strategy, probably wouldn't be worth it. But I do believe it is unfair to say, see, it wasn't worth it, or to say, oh, no third-party libraries ever, because I don't know that it's quite as black and white as some folks have put it. Again, I'm not defending, and I think some of the stuff that I described of what it was doing was bananas. It was nutty to try to go in there and load something from a remote server while the class loader is doing its job. Like, that's just, I don't know. I can't imagine doing that.
Yeah, no, it definitely has this place. I mean, I know of some apps that I've worked on in the past that used it for the marketing side of things, like to sell ads through Facebook, like downloads, like getting Facebook using the social network to get attention to the app and then track what's, being used or whether that was successful or not. And that required us putting the Facebook library into the app, right? So it's too bad I didn't know about it at the time, because I should have tried our apps to see if they were in fact crashing too, but probably were, I guess, right?
At least for me, every app that I could remember that I used Facebook to log in was crashing at the time. And
well, we weren't using login; we were using the marketing piece that you talked about, right?
And that would be harder for me to tell, right? Like as a user, that's invisible. So for me, I was just checking the ones that I know that I signed up for these using Facebook,
right.
Long ago. And I have seen some other folks bring up, Facebook has supported this web-based login method you could use if you wanted to do Facebook login without the SDK. I'm like, oh, that's not necessarily as reasonable a choice as you might think, because that might work in 2020 and 2013. If it even existed, it was definitely not that easy, because that involves an OAuth exchange. And that is getting easier because there's more tools out there that do a lot of this for you. Like the fine folks at appauth.io have like really good examples of doing OAuth plus the more secure type OAuth for mobile. Mm-hmm. But it's really easy to mess it up too. And I don't think it's sort of reasonably be like, oh, well, look at you, lazy developer. You didn't want to do this difficult OAuth exchange. And you maybe have made a decision to include, Facebook's login SDK because it does do that for you, right? That's part of the reason you would use the SDK, is it resolves that pain as a developer. Again, in 2020, maybe that's reasonable take to have. Like, look at all these other tools you have. 2011, 2013, that would not have been as reasonable. And it would be very, very reasonable that somebody had made a decision in the past, a technical decision, and then not reevaluated it, right? This feels like another lesson of like, make sure you're reevaluating your architectural decisions every once in a while to see, is this still valid, or have the conditions at which we made that decision no longer valid? Like today, I talked about OAuth, but there's also, sign in with Apple, which to me, I feel like beyond the requirement that you do so, if you're offering something like Facebook or Google login, I think as a user, is swell. You should use it. It's nice. It's based on OAuth, OpenID Connect, so it's not super different in principle, but it also is presumably less likely to have sort of nutty things done for weird ulterior reasons. That's my soapbox. I honestly didn't know how long we ended up spending on this, but I wanted to make sure to get the MTJC sort of opinion out there on this, because it's pretty easy to sort of be one-sided or the other. And I don't know that we rah or poo things. I think we're pretty fair here on this show.
Yeah, we do like to hate Facebook.
Yes.
You guessed.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm attached to Facebook because of my family obligations, but there you go. Alrighty. So what's happening in the world of Swift, Jaime?
Yeah, I've got a link here for the Swift.org release process for Swift 5.3. It's, nothing wrong with it. It's interesting enough if you're into that kind of thing. What caught my attention was a major goal for Swift 5.3 is adding official support for Windows and additional Linux distributions. Don't want to leave that in the cold, but I thought, I'm not going to take, advantage of this. I'm not a Windows user, but I really do like and appreciate the fact that sort of finally we're seeing the opportunity for Swift to expand even further into the developer community. I think this is, it's a good thing. I don't know. It's hard to qualify it as anything other than purely good. I can't think of good reasons not to make it available on Windows.
Where on this page that you got linked here does it say it's available on Windows?
The motivation and goals, it's a weird one-off side comment. Expand the number of platforms where Swift is available and supported, notably adding support for Windows and additional Linux distributions. But it doesn't even reach the headline. And that's why you listen to the shows. We catch details like this.
I was going to say, Windows is, arguably the widest distributed operating system for, computers in the world, right? Desktop computers, that is, right? So it's big in the enterprise, so I could see, if we develop things using Swift, like we've already got it on Linux, right? So to add it to Windows, might, in the same way that the iPod sort of took off once, Apple made iTunes available on Windows, that certainly helped the iPod initial sales, right? And we wouldn't be here having the show today if it wasn't for, Apple's decision to open up the audience for the iPod and iTunes, and, which then led to the iPhone, of course, and that's why we're here, right? So can't complain.
Yeah, and I like the democratization that it gives for Swift, right? That you're going even further outside of the field.
Well, it's already an old language. Apple. It's been around for 5 years already, right? So it's almost half over.
It's not half over in its life cycle. It's definitely halfway through its sort of hype cycle.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think, this is a little bit of a tangent, but give me 30 seconds here, right? So
all right.
When I go to Apple-based events and when I go to other ecosystem-based events, it could be Android, it could be JavaScript or web-based sort of meetups, API-based meetups. I could sort of tell a distinct difference in the crowds, but the Apple crowds sort of sit apart and not even necessarily always in a good way. And what I have noticed is there's kind of a baseline level of money that you need to have available to play in this game, right? Like the Macs are not cheap. iPhones, SE, even at a much, much lower price of $399 is still not cheap. And yes, you can have used or hand-me-down gear. You don't have to have latest and greatest. So that's all well and true. Nothing beats the actual sort of rapid reduction of price. Like a cheapo, I'm sure disgusting to those of us, on this show and listening, very El Cheapo Windows machine. That's honestly what a fair number of people starting the development career, especially students, might have available, right? This is the PC that I have.
Is this an autobiography by any chance?
Yeah, where are we going with this?
No, I grew up sort of fairly privileged in that respect, but I am still cognizant of the fact that, why does JavaScript, every year we always like to take a look on this show of what are the most popular languages? And by far, every year after year after year, it's always JavaScript. And it's not even necessarily, to my mind, just based on the merits of JavaScript itself. I would say, because every darn machine, on the earth has JavaScript, most likely, right? If you have a browser and the most basic text editor, and sometimes not even that, because there's a lot of web-based tools that you can use, you can build JavaScript-based apps. You can't very easily or very well do that today with Swift, right?
Soon you'll be able to once Swift 5.3 ships.
And that's my point, right? You could go the very there be dragons route of Linux if you wanted to go a cheaper than Mac route, but very clearly first class support was in Apple devices. And so I like the fact that this broadens the community. I'm hoping that we will see more cool things come out of unexpected places as we get sort of new blood, hopefully, into the ecosystem. I don't see any downsides to that, though. Embrace your Windows buddies.
That's true. Yeah, even though they're wrong, because the total cost of ownership of a Mac is much lower than Windows, but that's beside the point. All right, well, that's good news. Good for Swift, good for Apple, good for everybody. All right. So I just have a quick thing here. I posted this link here to the developer support app store page, not so much because of the awesome content that's there. I mean, it's okay, but primarily because somebody pointed out today of the install base of iOS 13 on the various devices. So if you look on the sidebar on this page, you look at 77% of devices introduced in the last 4 years on iPhones are running iOS 13, and 79% of all devices introduced in the last 4 years are running iPad OS. This is for the iPads, of course. But it's interesting that only 57% of all devices use iPad OS in total. So it's every single. I mean, iPads have been around 10 years now, right, or more. So interesting to see that it's still quite low for iPad, where it's quite different on the iPhone, because the iPhones tend to be 70% are using.
Well, we've known for a while now that the lifetime of an iPad is much longer than an iPhone.
Yeah,
so people definitely have iPads that can't be updated. I know my dad, for example, still has I think it's an iPad 4 or something like that, and it goes up to, I think, iOS 9, and it won't go any further. So he just hasn't upgraded in years, and he still uses it. He doesn't need anything better. Your old guy, he doesn't need anything more. So he's in that crowd. He'll use it until it stops working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's funny because some things still do work. I mean, like I still have a iPhone 3GS that I use almost frequently, almost daily, not quite daily, but some things are no longer working on it. But yeah, I mean, I can still get the weather, and I can still look at a few older social apps, right?
Yeah, or check email and browse the web.
And I know one of the ladies that has one of my very first iPads is still using the iPad. She's running an iPad 1, if you can believe it. Yeah, and I think it's running iOS 6 on it, right? She's still using it. So yeah, interesting stuff. But it's just interesting to see that we always talk about the adoption rates of the latest iOSs, and interesting that it's like still it's at 77%. I think what's that other site we look at all the time? The Mixpanel. Yeah, what are they saying these days?
I don't know. I haven't checked in a while.
But Mixpanel is like another tool where you put in your I don't know how to.
It's an analytics telemetry tool. iOS 13 adoption. They have iOS 13 at 74.9% as of this is as of December 16th, 2019. So they're a little bit out of date. I guess they've been perhaps there's past 96 hours. What do they say? Okay, 89.3% iOS 13 on May 13th. 89.3, 8.75% iOS 12, and 1.95% older. Now it's not clear because they don't spell it out whether this actually includes iPad OS, because it just says iOS 13.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I kind of suspect it does, because they've never really split it out before.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So back to you, Jaime.
This one just came out today, I think. We've got new game devices coming out, more video game consoles coming out, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X or 10. I honestly don't know how they pronounce that. It looks like an X. Are coming out. And so game development companies have been pushing their games and pushing their tools. In this case, the folks that are creating the Unreal Engine, the next one is Unreal Engine 5, coming for iOS and Mac in 2021. And of course, this is the same engine that they will offer for folks to build the next generation of console games. And it's looking pretty sweet. I mean, these are tech demos. Of course, you always kind of have to look at it through that lens. The tech demos don't necessarily translate to the gameplay graphics, but it's pretty exciting to see stuff this early as a sneak peek preview of what the next level of gaming is going to mean, especially because this statement that I made about iOS and Mac coming as well means that we're not going to be left out in the cold, right? You don't have to go buy a shiny new console. You're going to continue to see ever greater and better graphics on your iPhone and iPad as you've seen these CPUs and GPUs get really, really freaking good in these mobile devices.
Yeah, these images that you got here, sample images of the Unreal Engine 5 output. I mean, it says right here, the scenes were this well detailed. I mean, this is what looks like a photograph. They weren't possible only during cutscenes in early days, right? So, but the fact that they could actually render these on the fly is amazing.
Yeah, and I assume the competitive game engine products like Crytek and Unity, I assume will have, to compete, they'll have to upgrade their stuff. So it's all good. So had we had enough warning, we probably would have wisely had Tammy on the show to give her opinions. Kind of her domain, I think.
Yeah.
But short notice, thought I would note it here.
Yeah, cool. That looks pretty cool. All right. Well, I guess we're now at the picks section of our show. So what do you got for us, Jaime?
Yeah, I don't remember if I actually ever brought up conventional commits, or that might have been a pick on the show, or I might have casually mentioned conventional commits as a way to have a standard language and basically tags that you use when you're writing your commit messages for Git or other version control repositories. So it makes it easy for you to sort of visually scan what sorts of activities occurred in your history, like, oh, that was an update to documentation, this fixed a bug, this added a new feature. And you can actually write scriptable tools that can collect release notes and do other sort of fun things. Continuing in that same vein is something that I just started using because I just learned about it like a week ago, is conventional comments. In this case, using that same sort of having standardized phrasing, standardized tags that you could put in pull request, code review comments. And I found this sort of pretty helpful. It helps guide the, when I make this statement, am I nitpicking? Am I making a suggestion? Am I asking just a help me understand question? Or am I, doing something nice, like specifically praising somebody? I've found this pretty useful so far in my non-scientific usage.
So the idea is you put these phrases, or like praise, nitpick, suggestion, issue, question, thought, chore in front of your comment and bold it, if you will. And then that way the person who's receiving the comment gets an understanding of why you're asking this question, or what your comment about their PR is, right?
Yeah. So it adds more intent, right? Because it's, even as best as I try, it can be rather difficult to get the full flavor across, especially, when you're trying to avoid being mean. You're just legitimately asking I don't understand what's going on here question. It's hard to ensure that that's not going to be read as some sort of like offensive slight by the other side, right? Because you lose nuance and flavor in text. And I'll compare this to something that I had done. So at a previous employer, the iOS team had this sort of quirky but useful mechanism doing something kind of similar to this. And I think I might want to merge the two in some way. And I'm thinking about this in my head. So what that team would do is it had, Mark, you'll love this, they had a series of emoji that would be used to do what's basically this. So if I saw something on there like, hey, we should consider making future upgrades, I'd throw a magic 8-ball in front of it and then say, we should consider this for future upgrades. If I was just sort of nitpicking of like, this is kind of a weird style thing, we'd throw the high heel shoe emoji in front of it. And so the problem was nobody ever understood when they first joined a team, like, what the heck is going on here? What's this 8-ball? What's this high heel shoe? And I can't remember what the other ones were, right? And so it had a documentation problem. But I do think that the valid point of sort of trying to standardize on it, which is better here in conventional commits, you have actual words that make it more clear. I think I might like to embellish these with adornments, emoji adornments, to make it a little bit more fun and less sort of roughly mechanical.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my biggest problems with peer reviews and comments made on code is we've talked about this before. It's sort of, as the person making the comment or the person receiving the comment, how you interpret it. It's kind of up to you, but it can the intent of the comment can be misconstrued. Are you being critical, or are you just being suggestive, or are you just trying to mansplain your way through a PR? Whatever the reason is for making a comment. I think this, making it a bit more clear in terms of what the idea is, like it's like here, the person's put non-blocking in their comment. So maybe fix this in next PR or something like that, right? Kind of thing, right? Or here's an issue or something to be aware of, that kind of thing. You can put these comments in PRs and communicate your intent much better.
Yeah, I'm definitely cognizant of the fact that it can be overwhelming when you come in and leave like 15 to 20 comments on a pull request. It sort of feels like I'm dumping on top of the other person, and I'm not, right? I just want stuff to be better. And I think you pointed out something useful, which is not trying to hold code reviews hostage. Or like this one nitpicky change of like, I would have used a different word here. Like, unless it completely breaks the intent, or that we'll never ever be able to come back, I've leaned towards, hey, non-blocking feedback, let's go ahead and merge this pull request just to make sure the functionality is out there and can be tested. But let's talk about ways we could do this better in a fast follow-up pull request to refine that. I've never liked pull requests that just live for days and days and sometimes weeks of like, oh my gosh, when is this going to get merged? It's just a never-ending scope creep of additional stuff that this pull request is taking on. At some point, it's better to just, merge it and follow up and deal with it later.
Well, especially now that we're all going to be working from home and we're not going to be face-to-face. We're not going to be able to go to the guy's desk and say, what did you mean by that kind of thing, It's more important to be aware of what's actually intended, right? Yeah, because I've seen merge or sort of peer reviews go back and forth, in terms of, well, this is how we're doing it over here now, and you should follow our advice. And like you said, you're holding that PR hostage. You're also holding the developer hostage because he doesn't quite often understand what it is you're asking him to do, to be honest with you, right? So it can be tricky. So this is an interesting way to do it. We have a couple of guys at our company who are very descriptive when they make a pull request. They have an entire, screenshots and decorated text to sort of explain what the intent of the PR is, right? So that when you go in there, you've got a big flowery description as to what is going on before you get into looking at the code, in fact, right?
It's say it, but it sounds like they don't have enough to do.
Well, they actually have it. They're using Dash. Remember Dash? They use Dash as a template to sort of do that. We're on a large team in this particular case, right? And so they want to make sure that the entire team, is looking at the PR with open eyes, right? So it avoids a lot of conflicts too. All right. Well, so my pick this week is our friend Guillermo Rambo, who we've used a lot of times as a source in our apps. He's just like everybody else has podcasts these days, by the way. I don't know if you realize that or not, but he's come up with a little app which I thought was kind of cool, and it was a couple of bucks to buy, and I had some iTunes credit burning a hole in my wallet. And it's something that I wanted to do. This is basically a tool that allows you, if you're a podcaster, it allows you to very quickly convert your audio into a YouTube that you can publish on YouTube. And I've done that before with I was on a podcast with but he had me on the thing, and every episode that he does of his podcast he also publishes to YouTube. And so he had a script to basically grab, using Image Magic and a few other things to take an image that you created, like I have a GIF of a spinning record, and put that with your audio feed and create basically a 16:9 video that you can throw up on YouTube. This app here very simply allows you to just drag in an audio source, drag in an image that you may have made, and publish that to YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel, let me go there right now. I've published the last 10 episodes of More Than Just Code, or not last 10, I guess, since 290. I've published them up onto my channel, and I've also made a playlist for. You can also add to a playlist as well but I made these with this app that Mr. Rambo created for us. So if you click on that, you'll see it takes you over to a YouTube playlist of our last 8 episodes. Yeah, we only ever did one proper video for Spotcast, but I thought we'd put Spotcast ones up there as well, see if we get any traction on them. But yeah, it's just another way that people listen to and get their podcasts out there. So yeah, kind of if you're into podcasting and you're looking for a quick tool to do this, I highly recommend this. It takes, it has a couple of other video effects you can use when you're building it, but it adds a huge time to the rendering. So yeah, and like your podcast grows from 40 megs to like a gigabyte or 2, right? Because it becomes a video. So.
That's nifty. I was going to ask when I saw this on the picks list. I said, does it do what I might sort of expect, which is you choose some sort of image, album art or something, and then it has the audio over. That's cool. There's definitely stuff I've listened to that is that podcasts that went through YouTube conversion to have a broader reach and reach sort of a different audience as another medium.
Yeah.
Something I was curious about is I wonder if it does something silly, like there are apps out there that will take audio and then throw little like cartoon characters on the screen to sort of entertain yourself. And so you would see us talking out of, cartoon character type things. So it seems like it's not that. So if you were wondering about seeing us as like donkeys and pigs and chickens or something, that you'll be sadly disappointed. But, if you had sort of normal expectations, I think it'd be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for one of the earlier episodes of More Than Just Code, I got to find it now. Oh, you know what? There's a More Than Just Code channel that I created years ago. That's That's probably where it is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that one. I'm like, there's these other ones. There's a Greg and Tammy 1 minute video.
Yeah. That's on the More Than Just Code one, right?
Yeah.
I made those a while ago.
Here you go, Tim. I know how to YouTube. I've got a better link for you.
You know how to YouTube? I'm trying to go through the back door here. Oh, I've switched over to that.
There you go. So the reason yours came up, and I suspect this is the case, the reason yours came up with episode, was it 294, you said? Is I assume you happen to just be looking at that video. So if you look at the URL, it shows, V equals and then some other weird GUID and playlist equals. So if you just sort of take, /playlist and list equals this GUID, I assume, or random string of characters, that takes you to just the list.
Yeah.
You can see which ones you want and you don't have to choose. You can mash that subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you get notified when new episodes come out on YouTube.
Oh, really? Well, I have a few subscribers, but not very many.
You have one more than you did just before because I subscribed.
Yay!
I didn't mash the bell. Let me go.
Yeah, I might move these other ones over. So where's this one here? This this is a preview one. It's only a minute long. Where's our no notes? Here we go. So I warn you, this one's really loud, Mark. But this is a preview. You can see that I created with a little record player GIF. Oh,
that's kind of a cool effect. I didn't realize you would have animation of that sort.
So this is the one that was created with that script I was talking about, right? But this was not created with this app because this was done a year ago or 6 months ago, I guess. Yeah. So because we did a promo piece. And the one with Greg and Tammy, that one was an interesting one. I was playing with because the other thing you can do with YouTube is you can actually create subtitles for your shows, right? Because Google will do it automatically, and then so that's what I was doing with the Greg and Tammy episode that's there on that same channel. And then what I did was I let Google do it, and then I went through and edited them to make them correct because it was not hearing Tammy and Greg correctly, right? And he was talking about the JVM, as a matter of fact.
The Java Virtual Machine, when you say?
Yeah. You see the one called Cutting Room Floor, the one Java? Or they were, because Tammy and Greg were giving me a hard time about how I say Java.
Right.
How do you say Java?
I say Java.
What's wrong with
Java?
That?
Well, Tammy says it's Java, not Java. I kind of say Java, right?
Historically, yes.
She says it's Java?
Like Java, the island Java. Yeah.
Java?
I guess like a Valley girl would say Java? Java? I don't know. I don't hear it myself.
An overemphasis to emphasize the difference between Java and Java that Canadians tend to say. And it's sort of like in Harry Potter when Hermione says it's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Leviosa. Yeah, exactly. She looks like Hermione too. She's got the weird hair and a whole bit, right? So, but if you listen to that little clip there, Mark, it's only like 30 seconds long. You can hear Emmy give me heck for the way I say Java. I'll have a link in the show notes for those who are driving it home. Anyway, what I was saying, what I was going with this is that not only can you do closed captioning in English, you can also do closed captioning in other languages, right? So in theory, our audience could, spread beyond the English listening audience, even though we're talking in English as we speak, right? So the idea would be that you could have French translation, and I had no idea. Well, I guess I could try the French translation, tell you how that looks. But yeah, interesting stuff. It's basically Google's artificial intelligence doing it on the fly. That's cool too. All right, and I guess that's it for another week. Hey, Jaime. So if people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithAHair.
All right, and Mark, if people want to get in touch with you,
at markr@smapsoft.com.
All right, you can find me on the Twitter machine at Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA, and that's how you get a hold of me. And so until next time, we'll say bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been another episode of the More Than Just Code podcast. This is friend of the show, Mike Van Ochmans. If you want to find out more about the show, you can visit the More Than Just Code website at mtjc.fm. There you can find a summary and show notes of each episode. We list links to the apps, code, and news that we mentioned on the show. If you like the podcast, tell your friends. Please leave a comment on the website, and if you can, please write a review on iTunes. And please recommend us in your favorite podcatcher. All of these things help others find out about the show. We really appreciate your help with spreading the word. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. So use the hashtag AskMTJC. Once again, the podcast Twitter account is @MTJC_podcast. Please consider supporting the show by pledging any amount on patreon.com/MTJC. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.
You want to eat that, do you?
I do.
Sounds interesting. I don't know. It sounds kind of gross to me, but then I guess I've been on a sort of, conscious diet for too many decades.
I'm not going to ever eat it, even if it were in front of me.
Yeah.
But I want to eat it. There's a difference. Sure. Sure.
I haven't had a double patty hamburger in I don't know how long, so yeah.
So, it depends on what kind of diet you're on. But if you're doing the low carb thing, it's actually not too unreasonable to have 2 patties and veggies, and just don't eat cheese, don't eat the bun. Oh, the waffles.
Eat the waffles. Yeah,
the waffles will kill you. The waffles are
awful. Yeah.
No, they're awesome, but they'll kill you.
Oh yeah, and the maple syrup too, because of
the maple
sugar,
syrup,
right?
Yeah.
I know. You can't have any fun. That's
no, you can't.
Bottom line.
No, you can't.
No fun for you. There you go. Now I can start my 3D printer. I got a 17-hour print job to do.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm printing the Maltese Falcon. Did I tell you that earlier?
You did.
Yeah. What size is it?
It's let's see, a size that it's actually in the movie. It's in 3 pieces, right? So there's a head, a body, and a tail, or like feet. I've got the head printed now, and that took 6 hours.
Okay, so like the size of a bust, roughly, if I remember the movie.
Yeah, if you ever seen the movie, right? There actually is like a sculpture of a bird, right?
Right, but one that a normal adult male could carry around.
Yeah,
it's not like a huge marble statue or something. It's
no. It's the size of a water bottle, I think. Like maybe a little shorter. But I just got my 3D printer up and running again. So
what material is it? Can be made out of
PLA.
Is that?
Yeah,
it's like
PLA.
plastic.
Yeah, I think it's corn-based plastic actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's got an extruder, and basically what it does is it takes a 3D model and it does what's called slicing, where it basically prints one layer at a time, and then the head moves up a little bit on the Z axis, and then just kind of zooms around. And it's got a bunch of servos that move left and right, up, back and forth, and it kind of sings as it prints, but the motors kind of like make a singing noise, right? I don't like to leave it unattended for long periods of time, but I think I've got it to the point where I can actually probably leave it unattended. But I'm going to hook up because the way I print, you can either print from your Mac, which basically ties up your Mac for like however long it's going to take to print, or you can put the image, you can put the G code, it's called, onto a flash drive, and then shove that in there like a micro SD drive, and then basically writes the code. It's all written in text, and you put that in there, and then the printer interprets it and turns it into basically extruded plastic. It's cool. It's mesmerizing too. That's the other sad part about it. You sit there and watch it for hours. So I made a time lapse of it actually, if you're interested.
I would be kind of curious because I felt that 3D printers are still kind of at that stage where I remember early CD burning, where like, well, you're just going to get bad coasters every once in a while.
Yeah.
Right. And then at some point they figured out the magic to make it, I'm sure buffering technologies and probably other, hardware upgrades that made it so like, you just don't worry. You never lose one. And I feel like 3D printing, I really would love to see it get to that point, because I wouldn't even say I'm an enthusiast. I'm in a very casual interest in 3D printing, and I don't think my heart could live with like, 16 hours and 45 minutes in, it messed it up.
And it breaks. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not hardcore enough.
But I mean, getting the bass in is really really tricky.
Whoa, that's really freaky. It's moving so fast. Oh, that's pretty cool though.
So on the link I just gave you, it's Riverdale 3D. That's the site that I registered for. You can see a printing of the Millennial Falcon from a couple of years ago.
Oh, this isn't your machine.
This is my machine.
It is your machine.
That's what I printed last night. Yeah, that's a 6 hour. That's a 6 hour time lapse.
Yeah.
But if you go to the other site I put on there, the Riverdale 3D.
How is this the Millennium Falcon?
It's not Millennium. No, listen, that's the Maltese Falcon.
You said Millennium Falcon.
I know. I said if you click on the link. Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Click on the link.
I think he said Millennial Falcon, like
the Millennial Falcon.
Click on.
He can fact check with that one himself.
Okay, see the link that I put there called Riverdale Makers?
Yeah.
You click on that, it takes you to a website with my smiley mug on it.
Oh yeah, there you are.
And on the sidebar, you'll see it says 3D printing Millennial Falcon time lapse.
All right.
And you can see I have a Millennial Falcon above my computer here. You can see me printing that. And there's also a printing of the R2-D2.
Yeah.
Shot on iPhone, for those of you driving at home. So that's what I've been doing with my time during the last couple of days anyway.
I've been considering this sort of thing because a friend of mine, well, pre-pandemic, we're getting to this board game called Gloomhaven. Mm-hmm. You can think of it as being kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons or maybe like Diablo, because it's kind of like a PC game, role-playing game, but in a board game format. Yeah. And I've been on the subreddits where people have like really cool setups because it comes with, plastic game pieces. It comes with cardboard pieces. There are people who go wild with custom 3D printed terrain and replacement characters that look way cooler. So I've definitely, it's not cheap. It seems like it'd be way more costly overall than if you were to like go to a store and buy some stuff if they had it. But since they don't, 3D printing seems like a cool thing that people are doing. And right now it'd be a really cool hobby to just sit and paint that sort of thing, paint the terrain.
Yeah, make my own toys. Like you can. The thing is, you can use there's a bunch of free 3D apps. There's one called SketchUp by Google. I've gone in and made parts for things, right? Like for my I made an iPhone holder for my telescope. I printed a stand for my watch to charge. I forgot I did a little animation at the end of it. At the end of this thing where I made R2D2 walk around the very end. But anyway, yeah, it's cool stuff. I mean, like I broke one of my Roombas broke. Like the gear got stripped inside, and so I printed a replacement gear with my Roomba, and it works. It still works to this day. That's cool stuff. You can actually use it for real life things as opposed to just your toys, right? So
cool stuff being done. It's kind of interesting seeing like artificial limbs and stuff being put out there, custom stuff for people, animals, like sea turtles getting new flippers and that sort of thing.
Well, people are making visors. Those visors that people are wearing over top of their masks in healthcare.
Right.
People are using 3D printers to make those as well. Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What other exciting things have you guys been up to? What's exciting on Netflix or?
I haven't been watching much TV. I've been just working and playing poker and.
Are you playing poker with buddies or?
Yeah, online with buddies. Yeah, I'm in a couple of groups that we get onto PokerStars, and you can set up your own home game on PokerStars with just the people that you want to play with.
Yeah, that's like that competitor guy that you were competing against, right? PokerStars.
Competing against? What do you mean?
Wasn't Pokertini sort of like? Was that the guy that was involved in Pokertini? Remember, you had the Texas Hold'em guy or something like that. You told me about him once. No, wasn't that you?
And I used to write poker apps, but
yeah,
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Wasn't one of them popular and picked up by some guy and said, "Hey, this is a great app" or whatever?
Oh yeah. So yeah, a couple of the apps were but
it wasn't the PokerStars guy.
It wasn't PokerStars is a website, right? That does. Yeah. I don't know who runs PokerStars.
Okay.
But yeah, the app that you're talking about, I think what you're talking about is one of my apps, Chinese 13 Card Poker, was
right
during the World Series of Poker in Vegas one year. A lot of the pro poker players who are poker stars, but they have nothing to do with poker stars. There were a couple of videos on YouTube of them playing with my app and holding it up and showing their hands and stuff like that. Yeah, famous people that in the poker world you'd know. Yeah, Phil Hellmuth and people like that. I think was one of them.
Cool. All right, gotta go set up my printer for its 17-hour job. So
all right,
I'll talk to you guys later.
All right,
talk to you later.
See you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.